made him can bring near his sword. The mountains yield food for him. All the beasts of the field play there. He lies under the lotus trees in a covert of reeds and marsh. It just goes on and on. You know, just for one example, you mentioned, and then we read it here, about his tail. If you've looked at the tail of a hippo or or an elephant lately, it doesn't resemble the cedar.
Not exactly.
But there are what we call today dinosaurs that certainly would fit this description
Yes.
of the behemoth.
Yes.
And you know, when you look at what God's trying to do there, He's trying to impress Job, and does so, impress Job with His creative genius and His creative power. And He's basically saying, Job, why don't you deal with this creature?
Yes. And that evidence fits beautifully with the rest of the scientific evidence we've found on the planet. Things like Ica stones from Peru. These are burial stones that were found in the ancient Incan tombs, where over 11,000 of them that have been discovered, over a third of those have elegant pictures of different types of dinosaurs on them. Or we could talk about the Buddhist temple that was uncovered just last year in Cambodia. Had been completely covered over with vegetation, and yet when they killed off the vegetation, they pulled back the vines, they noticed that somebody, whoever built that original temple, had etched into that temple beautiful carvings of dinosaurs in them. Or we could talk about petroglyphs, you know, places like in Utah, outside of Blanding, Utah, there's a petroglyph on a natural sandstone bridge that has a striking resemblance to a dinosaur. And the question should come to mind, how did these people know what to draw if they'd never seen these things? And we could talk about the dinosaur figurines from Acambaro, Mexico. Over 30,000 of these things have been found. And ironically, when they had them dated using evolutionary methods, they came back with dates of roughly 2000 BC, a time that would clearly put the dinosaurs coexisting with man. We could talk about the soft tissue that was found fairly recently within a T-Rex bone. Now think about that for just a moment. A lady named Mary Schweitzer made the discovery. They found soft tissue, blood vessels, and what they believe are blood cells in a T-Rex bone. Now any molecular biologist worth their salt at all is going to tell you soft tissue and blood vessels don't stick around for millions and millions of years. Just 2 years ago, they found a fossil of a relatively small mammal that had a dinosaur in its belly. And you look at that and you say, well, okay, what's the big deal? The big deal part is, according to the evolutionary theory, those mammals didn't evolve until millions of years later, after the dinosaurs had all died out. So we continually see the evolutionary theory having to tweak and try to patch itself, almost like putting your finger in the dike that is leaking, trying to patch all these little holes, when the real scientific evidence continues to show evidence of humans coexisting with these things. We look at archaeological tablets that have been found that are attributed to Narmer, the legendary first pharaoh of a united Egypt. We have a Roman mural that was built in the 2nd century AD showing 2 long-necked dragons. Now bear in mind, these are hand-laid tiles that were put down in place by men who were living just after the apostles. Or we could talk about things like the Mesopotamian cylinder seal that looks an awful lot like what we today would call an apatosaurus. You know, Eddie, when you really look at the evidence, you recognize not only is evolution inaccurate, but the one worldview that our children and grandchildren really need to adopt, the one that is scientifically accurate, is a biblical worldview.
Brad, we are in your debt for taking the time to be a part of this series of lessons, and I have certainly not only enjoyed but appreciated and learned from just sitting in this seat and tossing you the questions and letting you answer them.
Thank you.
And we wish you all the best in your continued work. We thank you for being with us on our program today, but don't go anywhere just yet. I'll be back with a free offer.